everybody. How are you? How are we feeling? Thank you all for coming out. Welcome to the Courtyard Festival, a celebration of Boston's innovation. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's so amazing to have everyone here today. Despite the rain, you all braved the elements to be here. Just a few thank yous before we begin. First of all, thank you to Mayor Walsh for opening up this amazing space for Boston's innovation and tech community, to Pat Brophy and the operations cabinet for throwing this all together, and to Jackie Lender for all of the logistics that she did and her team. So a round of applause for them. Another round of applause as well for our amazing speakers. These guys are the leaders of Boston's innovation community, the people who are putting Boston #1 in the world. Round of applause. And that's really what this is about. Boston, we all know, is the #1 place for innovation in the entire country. But we don't do a very good job of publicizing that. We don't have these kind of events. We don't celebrate the innovation in our city as much as we should. So the point of the Courtyard Festival is to have these conversations and for everyone to talk about the amazing diversity of technology and innovation that's happening in our city. So thank you again for everyone coming, especially the community here who has joined us to see all of these incredible speakers tonight. And without further ado, we have two very special guests to start us in conversation. The first one you know very well, Mayor Walsh, who has been the incredible leader of this city over the past 3.5 years. And the second is a legend all around the world, Tim Wakefield, with his amazing knuckleball, his amazing skill, had 19 seasons in Major League Baseball, World Series champion with the Boston Red Sox, and is more importantly than all of that, an incredible community leader for Boston. He stuck around, and we're very, very lucky to have both of them here to talk about what it's like to put together a winning team. So without further ado, Mayor Walsh, Tim Wakefield.
Thank you very much, Dan. How's everyone doing tonight? Awesome. I have a pretty awesome job tonight because I was not always the mayor of the city of Boston. And in 2002, 2003, 2004, I had a chance to watch this man play baseball and go from 2003, I don't want to say you're in the bottom, not just you, but the team, but really going from a team that was being put together to a team that was literally almost one pitch away from moving on to the World Series to a team that actually did a lot more than that. And I think one of the things that I find interesting about sports and baseball, more so than the other sports, but really maybe a little bit of football too, is how a team can come together. And how I look at it as you put a city together or a campaign together, or if you put an office together, how it's important to have those different parts. It's important to have the pitcher and the catcher. It's important to have all the people in the different positions and the utility players. So I guess I'd like to ask you just a couple questions about your experience in baseball, and then from 2002, 3, and 4. And those of you that don't know what happened 2, 3, and 4, 2002, the Red Sox didn't make the playoffs. 2003, the Red Sox were almost in the World Series. In 2004, they just did it all. So,
it was a great experience. But you're right, Mr. Mayor, about, in my opinion, it starts with leadership. Obviously, you're the leader of the city, and with baseball, it starts with our manager and our general manager to put together the right kind of championship team that's going to succeed and bring a World Series title to the city of Boston. So 2002, Grady Little was the first. The team was sold that year, actually. So we didn't know who the manager of the year before was Joe Kerrigan, who was the pitching coach that when Jimmy got fired halfway through that year of 2001. And then Larry, Tom, and John bought the team that spring, and Grady Little was hired in 2002. The team had already been put together. Obviously, we didn't make the postseason that year. And it was, you always strive in spring training that our goal is to win the World Series, but it takes all 25 guys, actually more than that, because during the course of a year, somebody's going to get hurt. You're going to call somebody up from Pawtucket. That person's got to fit into the puzzle the right way at the right time. And 2003 comes along. It's Grady's second year. We take it all the way to the end. Obviously, I was the guy that was.
I wasn't going to say that.
I know you didn't have to say that, but I felt that that year our team really came together. Our pitching staff, the starting staff was really well. Our bullpen was really well. Offensively, we were well, and defensively. I think you have to click on all 4 cylinders for you to be successful. Obviously, the one pitch Aaron Boone homer that I can talk about now, I didn't want to talk about it then. That was probably the most difficult time, as I thought I was going to be the next Bill Buckner, honestly. And it wasn't until I got to the winter festival that we had, the writers' dinner in January, that I got probably the best standing ovation I've ever gotten. So
yeah, I didn't view you as a Bill Buckner in that particular case. I mean, I just think it was a long game, a lot of questionable decisions before you got into the game.
Right.
If I remember correctly on the
yes,
pitching.
You're right.
Yeah. So let me just try and say this: on a baseball team, obviously talent is important, but is it talent or is it chemistry? What do you think is more important for a winning team?
I think chemistry is more important. In my point of view, you can spend all the money you want to spend to get the talented guys, but in my opinion, it only takes one bad apple on that team that will ruin the whole atmosphere of all 25 of us in that clubhouse. And I've been on a lot of teams where it was one guy, or it could have been a couple guys, or it could have been the manager. The dissension between the players and management sometimes can ruin a team as well. I know that happened in 2001 when Jimmy Williams got fired, Joe Kerrigan took over, and all the rules that we had been running the team by all of a sudden got changed. And there was a huge dissension between us as players and him as a manager, that we went from 4 or 5 games out of first place to 20 games out of first place by the end of the season. So in my opinion, chemistry is the most important part of being successful.
Just personally as a Red Sox fan, and I've seen the ESPN special, the 30 for 30. I actually watched it a week ago. I just can't get enough of that.
4 days in October?
It's unbelievable. Yeah. Can you just take us and I know you were in that documentary, but can you take us through the Yankee Series, before it started, being down 0-3, and then kind of moving forward, what that meant as a player, the emotion that you might have had?
Yeah, I'll take you even back before that. I think the turning point for us during that season, we weren't playing good in July and towards the first part of August. And I hate to say this, but I think the A-Rod Tech fight,
I was there that day,
changed everything for us.
Great.
Because for so many years we were the stepbrother to the Yankees, right? And the lure of the curse of the Bamboo was always on our shoulders, and especially what happened the year before. We get to the ALCS, and we're getting blown out in Game 3. And I made the decision. I was in the dugout talking to Mirabelli and a couple other guys, and so we got to save our bullpen for tomorrow. I mean, this thing's not over yet. So I volunteered to pitch. Derek Lowe was going to take my start in Game 4. Get to the park. I think we got rained out. We had an extra day to rest. Get to the park the next day, and all I can remember is Millar and Tito had this such a great attitude, like, don't let us win tonight. And that's kind of the motto that we had going forward, is like, okay, we're tired of you kicking our ass. We're not going to take it anymore. Don't let us win tonight, because if we win tonight, we're going to beat you tomorrow. And if we beat you tomorrow, we're going to beat you Game 6. And if we beat you in Game 6, it's over with. And that's kind of the attitude that we had. And those games 4 and 5 were so long. Extra innings, David, the heroics in Game 4, heroics in Game 5. The momentum switched for us immediately. And I could feel ourselves, like, even before that, like we were all pulling from the same rope. There was one thing I know Grady Little preached upon, Terry Francona preached upon, is we all have to have the same goal. And I think that's the right formula for businesses too. Is like everybody, all the employees or whoever you might have, you got to be on the same page. You got to pull from the same rope, pull it in the same direction. And going Game 6, Game 7, I felt like even going to New York for Game 6 and Game 7, I think we knew we were going to win.
Was that your World Series?
That's 04, yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
That's my World Series.
That's nice. So as we think about, and when we look out the crowd here today, a lot of millennials, a lot of young people, some people my age, older people like us, looking at retirement down the road a couple years from now. I guess what message would you say as far as when I say message, I don't know if I'm putting you in the right giving you the right question, but comparing baseball to life, I guess what would you give a message to young people as far as comparing the two, if baseball was a business?
If baseball was a business, take pride in your job, no matter how big or how small it is, because it's still important. Like in baseball, the utility guy was just as important as the ace of the staff or the biggest hitter, and that guy was just as important of the team winning. So you can't look at you go into a job and you're fresh out of college and you get this great job, but yet you feel like you're in the bottom rung. You know, you're still important to that company or to that business being successful. So don't ever think that you're not important, and don't let in baseball for me, and the thing that I talk to kids about is don't let anybody ever tell you can't do something. You know, coming out of college or your professors or your first boss, like, don't let anybody ever discourage you from doing well at what you love to do.
I tell people a lot when I'm talking to people, you might have your mind set on one aspect of work, and something might come into your life that takes you down a whole different path. And you're doing a different job in a different area, doing something different. And I think something like that happened to you. We talked a little bit about upstairs. You talked about when you came into the league, you were second baseman?
First baseman.
First baseman.
Yes.
And how does knuckleball pitcher, World Series champion come out of this?
It's a great question. When I was in college, I was a power hitting first baseman. I hit 22 homers my sophomore year, drew a lot of attention out of the scouts. I get drafted my junior year in the 8th round, and I thought I was going to be this superstar power hitting first baseman, hitting 30 homers and driving in 100 runs every year. But my reality was quickly taken back when I was barely hitting over 200. And I happened to be goofing around, throwing a knuckleball with another position player, and my manager at the time in the minor leagues walked behind me and said, "Wow, that's pretty good. You think you can throw that for a strike?" I said, "Well, I pitched in high school. How hard can it be?" Well, the organization had their meetings about a month later where they go through every single player, and they get to my name, and everybody else is saying, "No, he's hitting a $189. He's not worth anything, so let's release him." And the manager that walked behind me said, "Before we let him go, I saw something pretty special in this kid. Why don't we bring him into instructional league and convert him into a knuckleball pitcher?" And 2.5 years later, I was in the big leagues with the Pirates.
That's an unbelievable story.
Yeah, when one door closes, I always believe that another door will open. It's
also having a manager that scouts out talent and seeing something in somebody that they might not see themselves in different areas.
Absolutely. And to add on to what you're saying, even in our sport, in baseball, you know, you may want to play for a certain team, but there's 30 teams in the league. There's 29 other teams that are watching you all the time. And I don't know if that relates to business or not, but if you're good at what you do, if you don't get along with where you work, I'm sure there's somebody else that will allow you to do what you want to do.
Because we do it here. I mean, we're always, when I bump into somebody in the private sector and I see that there's something in that person, I'll try and see, like, how do we get to that person and get them to come work for the city of Boston, because it is important to make sure you get some talent. We have some street workers that are here right now for the city of Boston, and they're street workers today, but I see a lot of those guys, tomorrow they'll be in different roles of leadership in the city of Boston, and it's about picking, and there's other people here as well. I could go into a couple other folks. Let me ask you one more question about sports. And you see it in politics. I got into the business 20 years ago, and people will say, "Oh, when I was in the House of Representatives, it was a lot different. We were more camaraderie, and we would kind of support each other." And I hear that a little bit in sports. What do you think is the biggest difference of sports athletes and then stars from 20 years ago when you got in the business to who they are today and moving forward?
I think it's the same. Like in the 70s, you talk about the Red Sox, or 25 guys with 25 cabs, right? It's totally different now, especially when I played. When I came up, there's a lot of camaraderie going on. I know us as, there's a little bit of separation between pitchers and position players. We tried to get that together, but I know a lot of us pitching on the pitching staff would try to go to lunch when we were on the road. We'd call each other and say, "Hey, lunch is at 1 o'clock today. Whoever wants to come." And we'd share stories or talk to the younger players. And as a veteran, I would try to give as much leadership. But that camaraderie is very important to the success of our team. And watching these young kids play, I think they all came, Betts, Bogarts, JBJ, they played together for such a long period of time. I think you're starting to see how well they play together. Pedroia is now the veteran of the club. When he was younger, we tried to include him as a veteran, gave him a hard time a little bit, but it was part of the process.
So you think that the athletes are the same, just
Yeah, the athletes are the same. They're bigger and stronger than when I was their age. Yeah. They're a lot faster. Technology is starting to change. You'll hear more about that later. But it's pretty amazing to see how it's evolved from the time that I came into the league till now.
Does free agency hurt the game? Does it hurt breaking that team up?
Say that again?
Free agency? Does it break that team up that's moving forward? Or is it? I know it's good for the players to be able to. Oh, wait till they go by. I don't know why I'm fighting with the ambulance. Actually, a fire engine. I know it's great. Free agency is great for the players to move on. Sometimes for the fans, it's hard.
Yeah.
But can it break up that team, or can it?
It can. Obviously, when a player gets to that point of free agency and beyond, the value of that player dictates whether the club will hang on to him or not, whether they want to rebuild, whether they want to make a change. If the equation is working, which I think it has been for the Red Sox for a number of years, I think you'll see, especially this team now, I think you'll see these guys play together for a long period of time. Just like in 2004, we had that core group of guys. That's why the rivalry with New York was so intense, because the 6 or 7 of us, Tech, me, Timlin, Embry, Schilling, you name it. Yeah. We played against Posada, Jeter, for 19 times a year for 10 years.
Yeah, the baseball's not the same when the Red Sox and Yankees are at each other's throat.
No, it'll change though. Watch.
It will. Hopefully this year it's nice. It's like they actually clap for the Yankees now. We're gonna change that up. Let me just ask the audience. Anybody, if anyone has any, if you have a question, you got a lot of questions. Anyone have any questions here?
Are we all Red Sox fans here? I hope so. I see a couple hats, yeah.
Yeah, I would hope mostly Red Sox fans. No Yankees fans, and there's probably a couple. Sean. Oh, yeah, Sean's a Yankee fan. Sorry, Sean. He works for the city of Boston. He's getting let go tomorrow. Thanks, Sean. Good thing. I'm glad you did that in front of him on TV. Yeah. Stand up and yell it out.
The windiest stadium I ever pitched in was in Texas. The wind, it was weird. I loved pitching inside because it was, I call it controlled chaos. The ball moved a lot, but I can control it. But if the wind's blowing too hard, especially in my face like it was in Texas, the wind would blow in from the outfield, and it wasn't like a complete circle, but the wind would blow in over center field and hit the stands behind home plate and just rush right in my face. And I had the most difficult time throwing strikes there. I had violent movement on it, but it was hard to throw strikes. I hated going there. Plus, it was 105 in August, and it was like, it was brutal.
Yeah.
Well, my career decision from going from a position player to a knuckleballer wasn't my decision. They decided for me, and I'm glad they did. But my decision to retire, that was a difficult one. I felt like I still had a couple years, even though I was 44 or 45 when I retired. It basically came down to my family. It took me a couple months to make the decision. I was offered a chance to come to spring training and as a minor league free agent and try to make the club out of spring training, and I was determined to do that. And then I started thinking about, let me get my family involved. So my kids at the time were 6 and 8, I think. So I sat them down. My wife and I sat them both down, and I laid it all on the table for them. I didn't say, hey, do you guys want Daddy to play or not play? I said, if Daddy plays, this is what's going to happen. If Daddy doesn't play, this is what's going to happen. And it was kind of funny. I still have this vivid picture in my head. They both looked at each other like, you want to tell them or you want me to? And they said, Daddy, we want you to stay home. And immediately, I felt like 1,000 pounds were lifted off my shoulder, and it made the decision that much easier.
That's great. Sean.
Every one of them. The question, if you didn't hear, who was the toughest hitter I ever faced? I always tell every one of them. I mean, I never took anybody for granted, but there was a couple guys that owned me, that, you know, they were my daddy, I guess. As Pedro used to say, the Yankees are my daddy. Aaron Rowan from Chicago White Sox and Magglio Ordonez, I don't know what it was. I just couldn't get I couldn't get him out. I was hoping to walk him. Yes, sir. Yeah, we were just talking about this earlier. You're going to hear from these guys, innovative, you know, sports stuff. I think technology is heading in that direction where it's going to help the game. One, I'd like to see it sped up. You know, it was hard for me to sit on the bench and watch the game when I was a player that lasted 3 hours. But I was just talking to the mayor, and Mother's Day, 4.5-hour game that had no delays, no rain delays. It was a 9-inning, 4.5-hour game. I think technology will help that. I think the instant replay is good for the game, but I think it slows it down a little bit. I'd like to see him revamp that. I'd like to see a strike zone be more consistent with technology, and I think the umpires would be up for that. You know, all the officials throughout all sports, the whole platform of major sports in this country and in Europe and other places, I think technology is starting to come into place as far as helping not only the player or the athlete, but also the officials as well.
One last question, then we're going to have to let Tim go. Yes?
If I hadn't become a baseball player, what would I have done? It's a great question. My grandfather was in the Air Force, and I grew up loving airplanes and wanted to learn how to fly. I actually went to college that had a huge aeronautics school, or aviation school, sorry. FIT, huge aviation, but my scholarship wouldn't pay for my flight time, and I couldn't afford to learn how to fly, but I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. So if I hadn't played baseball, I probably would have gone into the military and then tried to fly fighter jets.
Well, that's pretty incredible.
Thanks.
I'm glad you made it to the Red Sox.
Me too.
How about a nice round of applause with Tim Wakefield? I think I hand this microphone off to somebody else now.
Of course.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Tim.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Boston has a global reputation for technology innovation. It is also unabashedly the home of dozens of professional and collegiate national championships. The Sports Innovation Lab is a new company launched here in Boston designed to bring together sports and technology innovation on a global scale. With clients like Intel, Google, Verizon, and IBM, the company is off to a great start. Please welcome the Sports Innovation Lab founders, Isaiah Kazavensky, Angela Ruggiero, and Josh Walker.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And what a perfect segue. We want to thank the mayor for having us. Obviously, we got a chance to talk to Tim in the room above about how technology is changing the world of sport. And we're here to tell you about a company we launched just back in January called the Sports Innovation Lab. We are located right around the corner. But it's not about us. We're here actually to talk about the city. There's something missing from this graphic, and I know many of you are too far away to see what's on it, but there are a lot of bubbles. And those bubbles are what people that size markets or talk about cities or talk about how innovation is changing the world call clusters. And there's clusters of innovation happening in technology all around Massachusetts. And for those of you who can't see this, it says clean energy. We know there's a lot of clean energy companies here in Boston. And so there's a cluster of them that are sharing ideas and innovating. There's another one that says advanced manufacturing and design. If you know what's going on over the dry dock, there's all these different companies that are coming together to innovate in that area. But we're here tonight to talk to you about what's missing from this, and that's sports technology. We are a city that has sports at the core of everything. We have championship teams, we have universities, we've got some of the best and brightest minds in engineering and technology across the city. So we believe that it's important for this city to plant a flag. And we can talk about how that's going to happen, but there's an asset that we need to recognize, which is how far we've come as a city in building the sports piece of our identity as well as the technology piece of our identity.
So Mayor Walsh alluded to this, and Josh just alluded to this as well. This infographic speaks for itself. The rich, rich history in Boston. And Boston is an absolutely unique city the world over, and there's no doubt about that. With that rich sports history combined with world-class academic institutions, over 80 here, over 150,000 students, and many of those playing a sport, that passion that is really driven from championships, as well as this ability to actually participate in the sport and live that sport, live in a successful region of being able to experience that over and over, really puts us at a unique spot. And the numbers, you could talk about all the different companies in apparel space and tech space and sports space in Boston, with the most recent being GE, but it is budding. This is a no-brainer way to think about Boston being the perfect spot with the amount of talent and the amount of passion, really that we see day in and day out.
So who are we, and why are we here today? We think this is a great hometown dream team, if you will. We love the city of Boston, and as the mayor and Tim talked about before, it's all about the people. Boston is a city of people. And so we've come together. Isaiah Kazavinsky went to Harvard. He was the hockey stick security guard for my hockey team back at Harvard. Played 8 years in the NFL. So if you guys are football fans in the crowd, hence the size over there. Here, an entrepreneur and investor in sports tech, really loves this sector. Josh here puts the SMOT in SMOT. He's a former vice president of a major market research firm and has launched several venture-backed firms. Myself, I'm a 4-time Olympian in ice hockey, so you guys ice hockey fans? All right, I hope. Go Bruins. And have spent a lot of time on the International Olympic Committee, different sports administration boards and teams, and really understand the power of sport as a platform. You can tell any story through sport. Sport talks about what's possible with people. It really sets the stage and gives you a platform to show you what's possible in business. And there's so many metaphors. We were talking in metaphors just today, just before us. And so we understand that power, and that's why we've come together to create this sports innovation lab. So what we're trying to do, what's our mission? We want to accelerate innovation across sports through leading market research and insight from industry experts. So what does that mean? It means literally gathering the experts, both from the company perspective, from the individual perspective, and on a global scale, and harboring that energy and that passion and those people here in Boston. So we want to actually drive innovation in a market that actually, as Josh pointed out, isn't on this sector. There's no sports bubble. But as you know, there's so many cool tech companies in sports. They're actually driving the future of what's possible in many different areas. And we're going to walk you through that now.
So one of the things that's really important to realize, and they mentioned this when they introduced us, is some of our clients are the largest tech companies in the world. And they want to come here. And they want to come here because this is a city that knows sport, but this is a city that also has New Balance, Converse, Reebok. This is a city that has MIT, Harvard, engineers that understand how to transform the stadium experience. So when you look at the world that we're trying to bring together in this cluster, right? The sports technology innovation cluster. It touches everything. It's everything from brands like Gatorade to agencies like Octagon and Wasserman and CAA that are marketers around telling sports stories. All of these different types of companies, even the private equity and venture capital firms that are here trying to invest in the next generation of sports technology. That is the opportunity we're talking about. Bringing those companies here, creating that innovation cluster, creating jobs for people coming out of these great universities that want to work on the future of sport and not go out to Silicon Valley. And bringing some of those smartest people from Asia, from Europe, to come here and work on those problems and those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, the areas, after you do inventory about sports technology and what exists broadly across the board, you start to think of it in a completely different way. And as we did that, we've looked at over 2,000 companies globally, organized them across 30 different segments. You start to see where that technology and the resources cluster towards. And these are 5 examples of ones that really cut to, a lot of these cut to the heart of really the fiber of what Boston is built on. If you think about quantified athlete, not just in a silo, but quantified athlete, the ability to measure physiology on body as an extension of quantified self. Boston has a deep history around that. Being able to realize that is a several trillion-dollar opportunity. In wearables and a lot of the ability, the different ways to capture that actual physiology itself is going to be important to drive that. Smart venue, really think about a connected stadium and all the different technology stacks that exist, really as mini cities, right? Smart venue is an extension of smart city and Internet of Things. If you guys have heard the term precision medicine as well, even in kind of a deeper way, which is this way of customizing medicine or treatments for you specifically, each of us as individual people, that's really going to be met before that by precision nutrition, the ability to give your body what it needs as you optimize different pieces. We can go on. And the ability here also to take a look at esports is really at the cusp of really becoming a sport and intersecting with traditional sports as we know it as well, really making Boston the hub for that as well.
So what are we trying to build? Again, the research is amazing, the amount of companies that are popping up. We've heard of so many amazing companies in Boston creating sports technology, trying to solve sports problems that, again, have an application to health or have application to a city. And so what we're doing is aggregating that on a global basis, really trying to understand the trends, not just here in Boston, not just in America, but globally, and identifying clusters, right? What you see on the map here, we're actually identifying stadiums globally and creating indexes, innovation indexes across that sector. So you can imagine us really trying to define the space on a global basis and to push what's possible through knowledge. And that's what Boston does so well. That's why I'm really excited. Again, why are we doing this? Why are we here? We do tech well. We obviously do sports well. We love sports. But we also have the power of knowledge here. We have so many great young students already creating these wonderful companies. But we can harness those clusters, as Josh laid out. To us, that's what Boston is. And we love this city. We're so excited to be here today. We're excited to hear what some of the other speakers have. But this is about defining Boston in a new way, creating a brand new way to use sports as the platform and use Boston as a platform to show what's possible.
And I think we just want to end by echoing what the mayor said, which is that Boston doesn't do a good enough job of talking about how good a job we're doing. And one of the things that strikes us all the time is that a number of our clients send their smartest and brightest people out to the West Coast to try to learn about innovation and technology when they should be staying here. And so we hope that through the Sports Innovation Lab, through partnerships with some of the biggest and brightest institutions in the city, we can do that here. And thank you all for your time. We really appreciate us having us.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks to the city for having me here. I'm going to go and talk a little bit about mobility and why is it important in cities, and specifically talk about Superpedestrian. It's a company that was founded as a spin out of the Sensible City Lab at MIT that I founded and I run today with a team of 50-something people. It's focused on robotics for mobility. So I'll say a few words about why mobility is important and why robotics can help us make some significant headways there. So cities have been a locus of attraction for millennia. It's not new. The idea of smart cities have always been smart. And they always were sort of the engine that attracted people to become creative, more productive, more resilient together. Right? That's why they have existed for so long, and they're growing at an unprecedented rate today. Right? This is just a random example. You know what's happening to cities around the world. Most of the world is moving into cities. This is one of the more modest predictions. Today, the world is at 54% urbanized. We're looking at being at 2/3 urbanized by 2050, but at the same time, global population is growing. So estimates say that we'll have the same number of people living in cities by 2050 as we do on the entire planet today. Okay? So that's all urbanization. Now, at the same time, we're seeing big changes in technology, which are changing the space of cities. It's important to think about these in the context of the challenge that cities face. Cities cover 2% of the Earth's inhabitable crust. Okay, so very little land area. They consume 66% of the energy, cities and their infrastructures. They emit 75% of CO2 or CO2 equivalent. And they produce 80% of the world's GDP. Okay, so if you think about this, the challenges of the planet have almost merged with the challenges of cities, but they're so concentrated that if you can do something about cities, it's a great way to impact the planet as a whole. So at the Sensible City Lab, we've been sort of looking at this and asking, well, what can we do to improve livability in cities, to solve some of the more pressing issues they face? And really banking on a major change that's happening, we all understand, carrying very powerful computers in our pocket, right? What more powerful than what carried Apollo to the moon? People can talk to people anywhere. People can talk to machines that can talk back to people. Your average car is instrumented with hundreds of sensors, so machines can talk to cars, can talk to infrastructure. You can slap one of those. This is a standard machine-to-machine modem on almost anything, and it goes online. Right? So all of a sudden, we're looking at an environment which is interconnected, but it's not just about information. Right? The robotics is also becoming sort of an everyday part of our life. Right? It's proliferating. The age-old dream of humanoid robots is becoming a reality. Robots are all over manufacturing. We've seen those images in many different places throughout the world. A self-driving car is a robot for all intents and purposes, right? It's got vision, it's got some logic, learning, and it's actuated. And more so, robots blend with the human body. Right? These ideas of human-enhancing technologies, the idea that a robot can somehow augment the human body and make us enhanced, more powerful, or more resilient, or be able to regain a capacity we lost. That's becoming a reality today as well. So think about this as, forget about smart cities or Internet of Things. These are a little bit limited jargon. Try to imagine the web as a virtual environment that's merging itself with the physical world. So digital and physical are becoming one thing. And that opens the door to doing dramatically new things. And specifically, in cities, it really enables us to think differently about big problems. Access to jobs, access to education, clean water, clean air. Transportation is a major one. So Superpedestrian was founded to really focus on... Oh, no typo. There was a typo there before. Thanks for fixing it for me. Focus on the transportation slice of this problem. Now, we all get the problem of transportation because we all stand in traffic. We realize what the impact it has on our well-being, beyond the impact on the planet, beyond the impact of the economy, which are huge. It has an obvious impact on everyone's well-being, the quality of how we move around. Right? So we've changed our cities since the introduction of the automobile about 130 years ago. Cities stretched and stretched, right? And it's become so prevalent that it's a global problem. Right, this is a picture from Beijing. Before that, I think it was Phoenix, Arizona. Everybody is stuck in traffic. Look at what's happening to demand for urban mobility as a result of the growth in cities. These are, again, some of the more modest predictions. And we're looking at 2.6x increase in demand for urban mobility by 2050. So imagine 2.5 times more people moving through the road. And already today we have cities that are dysfunctional from a transportation perspective. Think about it another way. We need to have 2.5 times more capacity on the roads just to keep traffic as bad as it is today. Right? That's an awful place to start. People are beginning to get the point, right? So you're seeing the data, transit passenger miles are on the rise. This is the United States, right? Populations on the rise at the same time. Highway vehicle miles dropping. Look at here. This is Germany, right? Car country. This is overall miles traveled per car, irrespective of urban or suburban, in decline straight since 1990, and the rest of Europe follows. Right? So people are sort of giving up on the idea of a car slowly. This is, to me, maybe the more interesting one. That's driver's license acquisition, United States. Look at this one. That's 18-year-olds. In 1983, 82% of 18-year-olds had a driver's license. 2014, it's 58%. It's a major drop, right? So, and if you think about it, kids today think about cars as we do about washing machines. It's not anymore sort of a sign of your identity or something necessarily cool. To put it another way, if I came to MIT tomorrow in a Ferrari, people would think I have a problem. And that's a major, the emotional plane there has eroded. Right, so what else can we do? We started looking around. Superpedestrian's mission is to focus on 1- and 2-person transportation. The average occupancy in a car today is 1.55 people. Self-driving cars, their premise is all about sharing a vehicle as a mode of public transportation. But the missing link is we don't have good vehicles for 1 and 2 people that will allow us to traverse those large distances. So we started looking around. We said, okay, a bike has been experiencing renaissance these days. Ridership is on the rise. That's the United States. The overall numbers are still small, but look at the trend. It's significant, right? This is a bike sharing system in Hangzhou, China, the largest in the world, but they're proliferating all throughout the world. But there's one problem with the bike. Since we introduced the bike, the average city grew by more than 20 times in land area. Right? So this is London going from here before the introduction of the car to there in the 1960s. Major explosion. Basically, the distances between where we live and where we work and where we hang out have grown so large that most of us cannot cover them without motorized transport. It's just a fact. That's how we built our environment. So motorized transport is here to stay. The question is, what form is it going to take? So we partnered back then with the mayor of Copenhagen. That was a project that was done at the lab at MIT. And asked, well, how can we use the bike as a compelling alternative to driving? When we started doing some research, Copenhagen was a car city. Then they implemented a whole bunch of policy measures, and it became that, where 52% of trips are done by bike in the city, which is incredible. Think about it, in a city metro. But once we dug deeper into this, we realized that it has limitations. At 15 kilometers, which is around 9 miles, ridership just drops. It drops before, but there it really almost disappeared. Hills, which don't really exist there, but we studied at many other places, are a big inhibitor to cycling. So we thought we were smart. We said, you know what, let's motorize the bike. Then we realized that it's a super old idea, invented in the 1890s, and that it's a huge market. It's growing double digits, especially in Europe. 1.3 million units sold in 2014. The average price is $3,000. Very expensive and selling very well. People love them. But then you look at the products, they're clunky, they're heavy, super expensive. If we want this to become something that really replaces driving, needed something totally different. So we said, you know what, why don't we think of robotics as a way to extend the reach of the human body and put a robot on a bike, right? So I'm just going to show briefly a quick video on this. So we put inside the rear wheel that can go on almost any bicycle, a motor, 3 computers, batteries, over 70 sensors, radio connectivity, and you can put that on almost any bike and become souped up. The idea is to really increase dramatically the quality of what it is to have a powered bicycle. Can we move to the next one, please? Great. So when you pedal, sensors inside characterize very delicately what you're doing with your legs, the most fine motions. And then the system learns and imitates you. It imitates you so fast that you think you're doing all the work. But in fact, you're becoming about 10 times stronger, often much more. Right? So it's a learning algorithm in there that uses sensor data and tells the motor what to do. Then you can collect information from the environment, share it with other cyclists. You can build apps on top of this. So it's really becoming a platform. Now, if you're sort of the competitive type, you can think of this almost as a legal performance enhancer. And let's show the last video. This is just an image taken from somebody riding the wheel. So on the right, it's a smartphone app that controls it. On the bottom, it's data you can get about your body and how it functions. And at the same time, there are hundreds of data points every second that are collected about the system itself to make it safe and reliable. So there's a self-diagnostic and self-monitoring system that's running there that makes it a highly reliable unit. Now, if you want to think about this sort of as a provocation for how a future city might look once we claim much more of that space used by big vehicles today for people to use it in other ways, maybe this is what we'll be looking at. I'll end here. If you want to try out our product, it's called the Copenhagen Wheel. We have them outside. You can ride them. It's kind of a trip to try it. You really think you stole all of Lance Armstrong's dope. Also, you're welcome to come by Superpedestrian. There's a whole bunch of robotics engineers doing interesting stuff for 1- and 2-person mobility. And that level of talent really can only be found in Boston. People who use robotics to amplify the power of the human body. So it's very unique to here, and that's why we're here and very happy to be operating out of Boston. Thanks, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Cynthia Brazil, founder and CTO of Jibo.
All right, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here to celebrate innovation in Boston with you. I'm going to talk about social robotics in Boston, but I also want to talk about more broadly AI and robotics in this area. So, looking back, oops, wrong button. We've seen a lot of success already in robotics and AI. Back in 2002, we saw the launch of Roomba, which is arguably the most successful consumer robot in the home. We've seen the success of the smartphone revolution and the power of developer ecosystems and platforms to be able to populate our devices with a whole plethora of abilities and apps and services. And now, for the first time, we're starting to live with AI in a far more ambient, ubiquitous way than ever before. Children, people of all ages, are starting to interact with AI on a daily basis. And so, why is this interesting? Well, of course, because all of these things are converging, as technology tends to do. And this is what's making a technology like personal robots like Jibo, social robots, possible. So Jibo is a company here in Boston. It's a spin-out from the MIT Media Lab, my work, research from the Personal Robots Group. And it's really a new product category. And more than being a new product, it's actually presenting a very different vision for our relationship with technology, our intelligent machines, especially in the context of home and families. So I think sometimes the best way to introduce Jibo is to just let you see him in action. So this is an internal video. Maybe if you play the sound, just turn it down since I'll be talking over it a little bit. But we have been, we've been exploring a number of different capabilities. The robot will launch with a set of what we call them skills versus apps. Of course, when we talk about intelligent technologies in the home, they have to sit within a larger ecosystem of Internet of Things.
Jibo. Could you make it a little bit less
Jibo,
bright?
able to control your lights, talk to other kinds of devices, of course, is going to be a compelling use case for a lot of people.
Perfect. Thanks, Jibo.
You can see that beyond being kind of a device, he actually has a personality. He has a social presence.
Keep it a shoulder to cry on, but don't cry on me too much. Water damages me. I try not to hate anything.
And he has a sense of humor, of course.
I'm not a fan of water because.
And you can see that he comes to life, right? So we talk about how technologies don't have to just be restricted to flat screens, but they can bring content to life in a whole new way. So Jibo's motion, his screen, his sound effects really socially embody these cues in a way that make him far more engaging and far more humanized. So even things like learning a second language becomes an entirely different experience on Jibo than, say, learning it on your phone. And of course, if you can move, you might as well dance, right? We've already seen a lot of interest in music in the home. Jibo can take that to a whole new level. So again, this is just kind of a little smorgasbord of little skills, we call them, that you can expect to see on Jibo. Oops, let me go back one more. But again, it's really about a new relationship with technology. So when we think about AI and robotics today, we have images like this, right? So we certainly have technologies that are personal, but almost to the point of creating digital cocoons around ourselves that demand such attention that we almost shut other people out when we use them. We talk about the power of intelligent technologies to make them autonomous, to be able to do tasks independently of people. And now, of course, we have important dialogues about AI and concerns about replacing jobs, right? We have products like Alexa, which are no-touch technologies that add a lot of convenience, but are very transactional. When you talk about how we interact with them, they feel rather cold, and they almost treat us like we're technology. And when you think about how a lot of people and companies view the value of AI and robotics, a lot of it is very task-centered. It's really about getting a job done, but where is the role of the people and the experience of the people around that? So again, Jibo is also about how can you really redefine this relationship? Going from something that is not just personal, but relational and interpersonal, bringing face-to-face interaction back to how we interact with technology, and because we do that, bringing back face-to-face interaction as we interact with others with technology. Not just building robots that are autonomous, but collaborative. So a company like Rethink Robots is creating manufacturing robots that work in partnership with people, thinking deeply about how you create machines that actually augment and work side by side with us. Thinking not just about no-touch hand-freeze technology to high-touch. What does it mean to create a technology that's socially intelligent and responsive, emotionally intelligent and responsible, to treat you like a person, and to be able to support you not only in your kind of cognitive aspects, but your social, emotional as well. And then again, thinking about not just task-centered, but really human-centered robots. And when you do that, thinking about the new kinds of applications for these intelligent machines beyond manufacturing, beyond things like bomb disposal and so forth, to really thinking about these very intimate areas of quality of life like healthcare, education, and elder care. These are areas we have a huge care gap projected that technology such as this could make a tremendous difference. So why does this matter? A lot of the research I've done at MIT has basically shown that if you can create technologies that actually support a more holistic human experience across all of these dimensions, people are actually more successful with those technologies. So just from human-human interaction, we already know that the better the relationship between a student and a teacher, the better the learning outcomes. The better the relationship between the patient and the doctor, the better the health outcomes. Turns out it's the same with technology. So building technology that support us in these capacities is becoming increasingly important as we think about how AI and robotics can potentially help augment and support us in all the challenges we face. So there's a new path now to think about mass consumer robots. We talked about Roomba back in 2002, these kind of single-purpose, very kind of niche sort of products that would do, say, one thing like vacuum. We've seen products on this emotional dimension for entertainment, right? As time has gone on, we've seen more intelligence add still on this kind of utilitarian dimension, things like drones and so forth, and moving up towards more sophisticated robots like Da Vinci surgical systems. But these robots really view their major kind of value proposition as doing physical work. When you think about it, it's really thinking about robots as a labor device. Jibo is taking a very different position, saying that maybe the actual killer capability is about this form of humanized engagement and bringing content to life in a whole new way and building it on the idea of a platform, of a developer ecosystem like we've done with our smartphones. And in this way, now for the first time, a personal robot in your home not just can do one thing like before, but potentially many, many, many things powered by the ingenuity and creativity of people worldwide. So that's the Jibo vision. When we think about excitement in robotics, we've seen a lot more investment happening in robotics and in New England. So again, there's kind of a zeitgeist out there that the next age of intelligent technologies are not just about being an agent on your smartphone, but physically instantiated technologies. When we think about why Boston, why is this the place where this sort of revolution might happen? Well, when you think back to it, the fields of AI and the fields of robotics were actually created here in New England. New England is the birthplace of these areas, and we've maintained a very strong foothold in these areas ever since. We have a truly unique intellectual ecosystem of truly world-class universities like Harvard, MIT, but also, further away, Brown. It's an amazing amount of innovation in basic science and technology that is spinning out these highly innovative companies in robotics and AI in the Boston area. And it is the birthplace of social robotics. So this is actually a picture of me with Kismet. This was taken almost 20 years ago. Kismet is now in the MIT Museum, but of course it makes sense that a company like Jibo would be here in Boston because this is where the whole field and the concept was created. But beyond Jibo and social robotics, again, if you look at a number of very successful AI and robotics companies, many of them came out of these university labs, and they're in many different sectors, from warehouse logistics to, again, applications in agriculture, in manufacturing, in health, in many, many, many different areas. And it's not just these companies driving innovation in these different markets and sectors. We've also been world leaders in creating new technologies and ways of educating not just university age, but K through 12 as well. So when you think about the power of Scratch invented at the Media Lab, 15 million children worldwide learned how to program using Scratch. When you think about the success of the first robotics competition, Dean Kamen, it's really quite extraordinary that the breadth and the depth that we have devoted in the Boston area to the AI and robotics scene. And of course, it continues to attract amazing high-tech talent, and it continues to make Boston really the epicenter where eyes all across the world look to us, look to Boston to see where the next stage of innovation is going to be in these areas of building intelligent machines and technologies around intelligent machines. Even for the case of Jibo, when we started this company in 2012, social robotics was really just an academic term. But in 2014, when we launched our Indigo crowdfunding campaign, you see a boost if you do a search on AdWords on Google. Suddenly, social robotics entered the mainstream dialogue. It became a term that top-tier press from Wall Street Journal, New York Times, you name it, would all start to use. So it's bringing attention to these new areas of innovation to the Boston area. And a company like Jibo is not just satisfied in trying to train roboticists and AI people. We want to create tools such that app developers, programmers in general can now come into the world of social robotics, come into the world of robotics and AI, and create entirely new creative experiences on platforms like Jibo. So we're going to try to make this much broader in terms of who can develop these kinds of technologies and the value they can bring to this kind of technology. So, again, this is about a new vision of technology, a new relationship with technology. When you think about kind of how it's grown over time, from the PCs and the internet and so forth, the story has largely been about the democratization of access to information and networks. But when you think about a lot of the biggest challenges we face right now, areas like in the global aging crisis, the care gaps in healthcare, when we think about even areas like education, where not every child can have the advantage of a personal tutor, we know that high-touch engagement, that relationships really matter for the best human outcomes. You need the right kind of technology to help support us, not only in our institutions, but in the home. And social robotics is one of those kinds of technologies. So the vision it's really foreseeing is one of technology now, not just as a tool, but as a helpful companion that could lead to the democratization of access to this more humanistic, personal service that's scalable and affordable, highly personalized. So it's, again, a very, very different vision of our relationship with technology. And when we think about how this can help shape the future of cities, this is about creating intelligent machines that really work in deep partnership with people. Right now, when you hear the public discourse, again, around the fear of how these technologies are going to replace jobs, replace people in their jobs, Boston is really, again, this very innovative stronghold and really thinking quite differently about this in terms of how do you create these machines that can forge a very close partnership to augment and expand our human capabilities with these technologies. So I will end there. Thank you.
Please welcome Brad Mcnamara, co-founder and CEO of Freight Farms.
All right. I got the hands free so I can get super animated if you can see this. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here amongst all these great speakers. Tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Freight Farms. Our journey started. We're local guys. I'm a Bostonite through and through. But really, what we've done at Freight Farms and our mission really is to empower anyone to grow fresh food, regardless of their background and regardless of the location. And Boston was a great sort of testing ground for us when we were trying to figure out how to do that because of the sustained, brutally hot, humid summers and the sustained, brutally cold, snowy winters. So you get both ends of the spectrum to really test, what you can actually do. And a part of it was just that basic problem that comes into every city. I mean, I don't have to recite the stats because everyone's done that for me already, so thank you guys. But there's so many people, it's only getting bigger, there's only more people who demand food. We need access to fresh, healthy, local food that we know where it came from, we can trust. And right now, the centralized industrial system to feed us is not set up. Specifically here in Boston, your food is traveling somewhere in the vicinity of 3,000 miles to get to you, which is a big part of the problem, putting huge stress on the environment, putting huge stress on the ecosystem, and not meeting that demand in a capacity that we've come to expect. So our thought was, look around the city of Boston, look around any other urban environment. What if farming was possible? What if it was possible to farm in the middle of winter in one of those brutally cold snowstorms that we all know and love? Right in the heart of the city, in those in-between spaces, in what we call the marginal space, the underutilized, the underdeveloped, the throwaway space, and anywhere else you could think of. What if anybody could do that in those spaces? And that's really why we're here. That's why we created Freight Farms, out of a need to empower people to produce food anywhere that they thought it should be. Formatting's a little bit off here, but you get the picture. So really what we've set out to do and what we do today, based out of here in Boston, now in 30 different states in the US and over 10 countries worldwide, is providing a business and farming platform for people to grow food anywhere. That's the hardware, the software, and most importantly, and a big piece of that, is the knowledge and the connection to not only your farm, and to the technology, but also the humans, to the other people who are doing it, whether they're here, whether they're in New York, whether they're in San Francisco, whether they're in Barbados, you name it, you can all share. And so we threw a little video in here because rather than describe what exactly is the Leafy Green machine, that's our flagship product if you're not familiar with it, it's a 40-foot insulated shipping container. So in its first life, it was a refrigerator that ironically enough enabled the movement of fresh and produce goods throughout the globe. So we retrofit it with a vertical hydroponic system, LED lights, and all of the pieces needed for you to get it, land it, plug it in, add water, and start to grow almost 2 acres worth of lettuce in 320 square feet. And a big piece for us was making the whole product accessible to a regular person. I used to joke when we were prototyping that my goal was to allow my mom, who is not very technically savvy, to walk into the Leafy Green machine and say, I could do this. It took a while, but I think we just about got there to the point where I know my mom will walk in and feel comfortable. And everything is within the Leafy Green machine itself. So a big piece of it is to be able to grow plants 365 days a year from seed to harvest, and then empower those people, businesses, and organizations to enact on their vision for what local food should be. So within, as you can see, everything starts in the germination area, where we start natural, non-GMO seeds in our germination space where they grow into small seedlings and they're ready to transplant into the vertical columns. So the human, the user, is really just doing the most basic tasks necessary. Moving the seed, transplanting the seed, and then harvesting fresh food. All of the complex heavy lifting that comes into hydroponic growing, which if you're not familiar, is the art of growing food or growing plants without soil. So nutrient-rich water is passed over the roots of the plant, giving it everything it needs to grow. And all of that is controlled via the Farmhand software. We named it Farmhand because we wanted it to be an extension of the power of the human, very much like the Copenhagen Wheel, to allow for someone with less experience, less knowledge, to be able to do the jobs of 2 or 3 people within their farm and not have to worry about testing, balancing, and checking water solutions and working on all these complex pieces. Just let the leafy green machine, let the system do the heavy lifting. And you just worry about, what am I going to grow and how am I going to feed more people? And that's really, when it comes right down to it, what we set out to do, is to create these things, these tools that connect people to food and food to communities, and those communities are more and more in cities. And the way we sort of see the future, when we talk about smart cities, we talk about food systems, everything is going in a new direction. We're utilizing technology in a way that is really fascinating in every facet that we've touched on today. But when I talk about the food system, when you look at it, if the food system was built today from the ground up, it would look very different than the way it is. We would just demand more, better, faster. That's just the way we are. And also, we want to be connected to where it comes from. So that new infrastructure for the future of food, to us, has to be decentralized, connected, and data-driven. It's just the way of the future. So we set out to do, and what we've done so far, is create a network of commercial farms throughout, like I said, 30 different states, over 10 different countries, empowering people to do what is best for their community. Because when it comes to food, it's a very personal experience. You know your neighborhood, you know your community, and you do what's right by that community. And we just want to give you the tools and the knowledge to do that. So some of the farms that, we're Boston-based, and I'm very proud of what our farmers have been able to do in the neighborhoods we've touched. Activating space under 93 over in the South End with our friend Scott, who decided he wanted to stop being an accountant and become a farmer. So we said, sure thing, Scott, let's do that. So he partnered up with some local businesses in the area, a developer, Be Good Restaurant, who's a huge proponent of local and knowing where your food comes from, to put local food into the community. East Boston, one of our oldest customers, Sean and Connie Cooney, definitely check them out at Boston Public Market. They're growing in a parking lot in East Boston year-round, fresh, healthy, local lettuce. And they've created a nice lifestyle brand for themselves and a brand unto itself, which is really exciting to see, because when Sean came to me and showed me this sort of beaten down tow lot in East Boston and said, this is going to be my farm. And 5 farms later, I believe him. And then to be able to work with young people and the next generation of farmers, being able to put a leafy green machine at Boston Latin School, one of the oldest public institutions in the country that has a farm right outside that brick wall. That's their cafeteria. So students running a farm, interacting with the plants, understanding that there's biology, there's physiology, there's chemistry, there's all sorts of things happening, and they get excited about it. And on top of that, they grow their own kale, they eat their own kale, and all of a sudden, they're liking kale. These are just some of the fun, happy students doing their thing. Isn't farming happy and just so exciting? But that's really part of it. And in West Roxbury, what they're doing at Catholic Memorial, again, just getting the next generation of people comfortable with farming. And there's a decline in who is farming. The average age of farmers is, going up dramatically, is over 60 years old. Yet, we need more food. We need to feed more people. So we have to do it in a smarter, more efficient way. And that's really what the future of food and the future of cities are really all about. It all works together. And our belief is very strong that the future of food needs to be environmentally responsible. So finding a way to use our resources smarter, faster, stronger, It has to be cost effective. Access is a big piece, especially with healthy food and healthy produce. So we have to get much better and continue to be better so that healthy local produce can be accessible to all populations. Accessibility, being able to not only get that food, but actually interact with where it came from. Know who grew it, know why they grew it, and know why they grew it for your community. And also resilient. On top of that, understanding these climate issues and everything that's happening in the world, we need to have a system that can't be at the mercy of one big climate event that ruins an entire supply of a certain crop. When we look at it, one of the most important pieces for us is putting that all together and not just holding it all close and walled off just for us at Freight Farms, but is to open it up and actually put it out there so that the actual solution is in the hands of not just a few, but in the hands of many. Because as we like to say, in a population that's growing by the billions, the only way to feed them is to make millions of people into farmers. Thank you.
Please welcome Rika Alisi, founder and CEO of BeautyLink.
Hello, everybody. I am actually really excited to just have fun. So in case you guys are looking for stats, you're probably not going to see that from me, just to give you a heads up, right? But I am going to have a little fun by giving you guys a little bit of knowledge about McDonald's, Steve Urkel, and Boston. That's just how I figured I should really talk about innovation, is just have fun with it. And the reality of it is that the beauty of freedom is now more alive than ever when it comes to work. And we think of work like this, right? How many of you guys remember the good old days when you thought work was only 9 to 5? And you were gonna wear that really horrible headset to talk to someone on your team? Right? It's transformed greatly with technology. Companies, pretty much with the Uber X model, like myself, have been able to really play on people's passions and look at what does it mean in order to balance work, life, and passion in order to make a living for yourself. And so this brings birth to the gig economy, right? I do not know how to tell you guys that the gig economy has been in existence in Boston forever. Because looking at everybody in here, you guys look fabulous. You guys love the beauty industry. And it's definitely one of the places in the city that has always been gig focused, right? A beauty professional will not get paid unless they're cutting your hair. And if they're not cutting your hair, they're not getting paid. Right? And that's why I love what I do with my company, which is really not about melting makeup, right, on a hot day, but more or less about melting the stereotype that work can only happen in the salons for beauty professionals. We are a two-sided marketplace that connects customers and beauty professionals for work, right? And I love it. I have to say, I love them too, because they don't melt makeup on your face on a hot summer day. I thought it was going to be a hot summer day, so the joke was really going to work. But I want to tell you guys something special about Massachusetts as a whole. Now, how many of you guys actually eat McDonald's? Okay, not too many, so you're not going to really care for the statistic, but when it comes down to the amount of McDonald's and the amount of nail salons in the state of Massachusetts alone, can you guess who is actually winning, if it's McDonald's or the nail salons? You guys think it's the nail salon? Okay. And you're right. They beat them by 2 times throughout the whole entire state. So there are 2 times more nail salons in this state in comparison to McDonald's. I just want to let you guys know that beauty is taking over, right? It's taking over to a completely different level. But what you guys don't understand, and why I'm really excited about the work that I do here in Boston, is that we're increasing access to individuals by allowing beauty professionals to go into people's homes. So how many of you guys think about a beauty service for an individual with a wheelchair when you go to a salon or a barber shop? Take a look around and see that. Take a look at how many people are not thinking about it. But when it comes down to the change of what the city is going to look like, we need to be more innovative in terms of access to every single thing that there is. Not only is it food, sports, it's also beauty. We all care about what we look like. We all enjoy looking good. And with that, you know, this is the reason why I built the on-demand service when it came to BeautyLink, right? We really look at being able to increase the access for the customers and the beauty professionals to do even more work. But the innovative part about, you know, looking at Boston is that you guys have no idea how many times I've been told to move to New York and build out my company. And I was like, are you telling me that Boston is just not that beautiful? Like, people just don't care about what they look like, right? Like, we're walking around like a bunch of zombies and, you know, Frankensteins outside. I know that sometimes we don't like to match our shoes, and we don't like to wear, you know, flip-flops traditionally. We like the socks with them sometimes, right? But I think about if Boston is a place for innovation, right? Why can't I do it here? What is stopping me from doing it here? And there's nothing really stopping me. We've been able to build out the technology. The hard part about being able to say, you know, Boston, 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 is because Boston hasn't thought about what it means to create policy and access around the beauty industry. And that's why I refuse to leave Boston. I'd much rather bring Boston to a place where it could become a leader in looking at what does it mean in order to build policy for service-based industries, such as the beauty industry. And I'm so excited because, you know, I've met such great people, and I've seen such great things. But the one thing that still scares me about Boston, that's not innovative, is, you know, well, actually, let me just go back. You guys don't need to see Urkel just yet. Is that the environment, it still hasn't changed too much, right? I think about what Boston can be and what it will take in order for us to do that. And this is when you guys get to see Urkel, right? You guys, have any of you guys watched Family Matters? Yes, you guys are Family Matters fans, so you guys are gonna love this, right? So this is Steve when he's just starting out and he's in love with Laura, right? And he's just gaga, the experiments haven't gotten out of whack yet, right? There's Stefan, right? Looking at us, gazing at us a little bit. This is Boston in terms of like, you know, all the accelerators and the resources. We're Stefan, right? We're coming out here, we're stepping out real great. But then there's Myrtle, right? Myrtle, the little southern charm that comes into the city here and there and tells us, hey, Boston, you guys are not doing what you guys can. You guys need to do something a little bit different. What can you guys do that's a little bit different? And I suggest that we become Bruce Lee Urkel, right? I suggest we become Bruce Lee Urkel. We need to kick a little butt, right? We need to combat some of the issues and the situations that keep us from being the most innovative city in this country, right? We are the city on the hill. That is what has always been taught to anybody that was born and bred here, like myself, right? And I want us to become Bruce Lee Urkel, okay? You guys can hashtag that. Bruce Lee Urkel Boston, right? That's really what I want. But we have to change our ideas of what innovation looks like. And innovation in Boston still looks a little bit like, can anybody guess the show that I'm talking about? Silicon Valley, right? So Boston still looks a little bit like Silicon Valley. Sorry to have to share that truth with you guys, but we have the ability to, I don't want to compete with that. I'm losing a minute. Okay, almost. All right, so there are opportunities for us to do much better in terms of, you know, what Boston can be. Let us not be Silicon Valley. Let us really be strong in our voices and stating that we want to be different. And right now, we really haven't done that. And I'm challenging everybody in here to make sure that you're pushing everybody and use my Urkel scale when you're thinking about how to force change into Boston. And with that, I want to thank you.
Please welcome Justin Kane from the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. I have the honor to close out this event, and it's a privilege because after hearing all the different speakers, I could be, it's a testament of why I love this region. But before I begin to tell my quick story, can we just give all the speakers a round of applause, please? So this event particularly resonated with me just because for the fact that it reminded me why I love this region, why I stay here. Just a fun fact, a few years ago, I seriously considered moving to Chicago. And the reason why I stayed, though, was that I was reminded of the diversity of leadership and innovation that is happening here. So this event really did a great job capturing robotics, farming, consulting, beauty products, and everything in between. So I just want to say thank you to the city, to Jackie, and the entire team that put this together, and we're very proud to partner here at the Chamber. Have a great night.